kitchen. I'm just here having a little bit of coffee, and I've got some biscuits that I already made yesterday. So I'm enjoying that for breakfast right now. Let me show you so you can take a look. So this is what we will be making today. So in the morning, sometimes I like to enjoy my biscuits with jam and butter. If you have clotted cream, or if you know how to make clotted cream, it's fantastic. Yes, my name is Steph, and I work with the NWT Literacy Council, and I'm very excited to show you how to make biscuits today. So we're going to get started first off with adding some flour and some very cold butter. So I'm just going to grab the butter from the fridge because it's really important that it is quite cold. Okay, so we have our hard butter. You also want to make sure that it's not too cold. So I made the mistake actually yesterday. I only had frozen butter, and I ended up chopping that up and putting it in my biscuits, and so they weren't quite as flaky as what I would like them to be. So we'll see. Maybe my mom's watching and she'll be able to correct me if I do something wrong. Okay, so we're gonna put the butter in here. So you can see I've already sort of cubed it into little pieces. Okay, and I'm just gonna turn the video down a bit so you can see what's going on here. Actually ended up, I don't have a tripod for my phone, and I put up the phone with some plasticine. Works really well, just FYI if you ever do a Facebook Live again. So you may remember me from Toothy Storytime with Steph, and so this is my second ever Facebook Live event, and I'm very excited that we're making biscuits because I grew up eating these biscuits all the time. My mom would make them for me, and it was sort of like a comfort food, you know, for like a gray day like today. It's nice to have some biscuits with soup or some biscuits in the morning with your coffee. And maybe you just want to write in the comments if you've ever made biscuits before, if you have your own biscuit recipe that you would like to you'd like to share with the group. You can post that in our event page. These are also quite similar to bannock, so if you have a nice bannock recipe you're willing to share, I'd love to see that. Okay, so what we're doing is we just want to make sure that the flour is really beaded. So I don't know if you can see, it's getting there, but you want to do a little bit more than that. So in here we've got 2 cups of flour and a 1/3 cup of cold butter. So once that gets incorporated quite well, it takes a little bit of work, but I find that this actually really helps. I just bought this at Lulu's the other day because we didn't have, I didn't have one. I was using a fork before, and it's doable and it works fine, but it takes a lot more arm power. So I like to have this. This is kind of a nice break from what I'm normally using, and it goes a little bit faster. So once you've got your cold butter incorporated, the other ingredient that we'll have is 3 teaspoons of baking powder. So here I've got my 3 teaspoons ready of baking powder, so I'm going to toss that in with the flour so that it incorporates evenly with the butter. You can actually do that step right at the beginning if you want. Is there anybody making biscuits with me right now? Because I put the recipe online for that reason. If you're making biscuits right now, let me know. I would love to know who else is going to be able to enjoy delicious biscuits after this is done. So this is quite quick, simple, only uses a few different ingredients. So I like to whip something like this up on occasion. If you want to make your biscuits salty, I like to just toss a little pinch of salt in with it. My butter is salted. If your butter is unsalted and you're okay to eat salt, then I would toss maybe a teaspoon or maybe even a little bit more into your baked good. The other thing you can do is you can also make sweet biscuits. So if you want, you can add a couple tablespoons of sugar in here, add some dried fruit, some raisins. I'll show you a gluten-free creation I made here in a little bit. I have a friend who's gluten-free, so I'm always thinking about ways to incorporate gluten-free desserts or pastries into my life. It's debatable how they turned out, to be honest. I did try them and they're okay. My friend says that they're actually quite good, but she's used to not eating gluten, so I'll show those to you in a little bit. Oh, lemon meringue pies, Linda. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's great. Cheese. Oh yes, okay, so yes, cheese, that's fantastic. I'm glad actually, Sarah, that you reminded me of cheese. So just so you know, I've put 1/3 cup of milk into my mixture. But the other thing I wanted to show you is, so I got a bunch of this white Stilton cheese. It has mango and ginger in it. And when I made biscuits earlier today, I used this, and it's actually quite good. So Parmesan, like other hard cheeses, are good. This one, it's quite expensive, so I got it for a really good deal, 50% off. If you ever find cheese at 50% off, you can just freeze it and then save it for later when you need it. So anyway, this is great. Let me just grab a spoon, and I'm gonna start to mix the milk in with my biscuits. My husband is using this time at home to incorporate his biscuit. He'll have to try your recipe. Cool, thanks Katie. I'd love to see what his recipe is. Chef Michael Smith's frozen butter biscuit recipe. You grate frozen butter. Oh, that would make it very sort of crumbly and like have a nice texture, because when the butter melts in the oven, then you start to get little like butter holes and it's more flaky and crispy. Okay, I'll be right back. So I've sort of modified my kitchen here so that this you can see what's happening here. So I've got a stool. I'm going to sit down so you can see me better. So I'm mixing now together the milk with the butter, and usually I at this point I start to panic a little bit because I'm like, there's not enough liquid in here, and it's not going to turn out, it's too dry. So bear with it and just keep mixing and stirring until you start to see it sort of gather together. So it'll take a little bit of time, and the butter will probably melt a little bit as well. Butter pockets, I know, right? I know. I love butter. My whole family loves butter. Even my dog loves butter. She's jumped up on the counter a couple times to try and eat entire blocks of butter. I can't really be mad at her because butter is really so good, right? I mean, if I were her, I'd probably be doing the same thing. Pockets of butter. It looks like the right people are watching right now. Everybody loves butter. Great. Well, these have quite a bit of butter in them. And usually I like to use white flour. It's just like, it's definitely not as healthy as if you were to use whole wheat, but I find if you're having these once in a while, it's really makes it taste a little bit better. It's lighter. Okay, so just so you can see what's going on here. So you can see it's starting to come together a little bit more. And about at this point, I'm going to start to use my hands and just lightly incorporate the butter and the flour together. So the warmth of my hands is going to bring this together a little bit more. Laura Malone, I remember my mom teaching my great granny's biscuit recipe. She kept saying, make a well. Ah, yes. That's a great, I can't read more than that at the moment, but I can see you've written more there. No one eats biscuits for the health factor. Yeah, that's true. Good point, Laura. Nobody eats biscuits because of the health factor. This is true. So it's still looking a little bit dry to me, and I've still got a bit of flour there, so I'm actually just gonna toss a bit more liquid in. So I've run out of milk, so I'm gonna use a little bit of cream. Just eyeball it there. It should work. Yeah, so at the Literacy Council, since I'm the oral health literacy coordinator, I have to say that after you eat something like this, you do probably want to brush your teeth because the flour is basically a sugar. So when it sits on your teeth for a really long time, then it acts as a sugar. So you want to make sure that you brush it away and don't leave it on for too long. A lot of people don't realize that it's not just sugar and candy and sweets that cause cavities. It's actually things like this, like flour and cereal and milk even. Okay. So if my mom were here right now, she'd say, don't work this too much. You're touching it too much and you're melting the butter, and I probably am, but it's still looking quite dry. So I'm just gonna put a little bit more. We'll see how this goes. And Laura, how are your great granny's biscuits? What do they taste like? Are you still making them? And again, if you missed before, if you'd like to share a biscuit recipe or a bannock recipe that you love, please go ahead and do that. Okay, so there we go. Starting to form a little bit more. So with the warmth of my hand, it's starting to form a little bit better. Okay, it's still quite crumbly. Very crumbly. I swear that it worked. It worked before. I promise. So, as you can see, I have my breakfast that's already ready here. So I did really make biscuits, I promise. It's a real biscuit recipe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my tray and I'm going to start to form my biscuits. And I'm going to set the oven on to 350. So when they're ready to be cooked, it will be hot, it will be warm. So you set for 350. I'm going to grab my tray here. Okay. So some people like to use a sheet, like to pat this down and make a sheet like this and then cut out little circles so that they're these really nice little round shapes. I'm not going to do that. I quite like having them in sort of these like rustic scone-like balls. So I'm going to just do a couple more here. And So yesterday when I added the white Stilton, that probably made it a little bit more moist. Oh, there's that word, moist. So Justin, sorry, I'm just thinking about Justin Trudeau. I don't know if anyone's seen that video. Anyway, but the cheese probably makes it a bit more, holding it together a little bit more than it did today, because today I skipped the cheese. So anyway, I've got my tray here, so we will put these in the oven. I'll pop them in, and magically we have biscuits that have already been prepared. I mean, these are the biscuits. I just have a really good oven. So normally you want to cook your biscuits to be at 350 for 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how big you make them. So if you make them quite big, you might want to leave them in a little bit longer. So these are the biscuits, and usually you want to watch to see when they start to get a little bit golden and brown. That's when you want to take them out, and they'll cook a little bit once you take them out of the oven as well. So there you have it, folks. These are the biscuits that I grew up eating, and as I said at the beginning, I like to eat them with butter, jam. If you have clotted cream, it's fantastic. And I also wanted to share this creation with you. So I don't know if anyone who's watching is celiac or gluten-free or has gluten intolerance, but a lot of people do. So I ended up making these with coconut flour. And I added a few other ingredients. Like I mentioned, the biscuits can be sweet or savory. And so, yeah, I decided that for the gluten-free biscuits, I would make them sweet, and I added a bit of sugar. I also added cacao nibs, almond flakes, and coconut flakes as well. And hi Kinkin, nice to see you. So anyway, I tried them. I don't love them, to be honest, but I also can eat gluten. And so I asked my friend, she says that they're actually quite good. So I will listen to her. She said that she holds them together because they're a little bit crumbly. She holds them together with some butter, some margarine, and it's perfect. So you can try that out, substitute with a different kind of flour. It's a little bit dry for my liking, but if you're not used to eating gluten anyway, you might actually enjoy it. So that's that. And when I was getting set up this morning, someone that I live with here, he's like, oh, you baking today? Is that just for fun, or is it part of literacy? And I was like, yeah, it's part of literacy, but it's also fun, because you're looking at the ingredients list and you have to calculate, and with baking you usually have to be more precise. So yeah, it's part of literacy for sure. And we all have to eat, right? So I hope you enjoyed this little I guess tutorial or video on making biscuits. And we are going to continue doing lots of Facebook Lives as we continue on. And we have Katie and Sydney who will be running a Facebook Live on Saturday morning, I believe at 10 a.m. So you can check our Facebook events for that. And Katie, maybe you can confirm with us that it's actually 10 a.m. in the comments. But we will continue to see you as time goes on. Thanks so much for watching, and happy eating, everyone.